We are on cycle one. For cycle one, you will need something to take notes with. You will also need to open up your Freak the Mighty book to page 110, A Chip Off the Old Block. Please pause the video and find those two things. Now that you have the book open to page 110 and you have something to take notes with ready to go, we are going to start at the word once. Once on the TV, this dude hypnotized a lobster. Maybe you saw it. He touches a lobster and it freezes. It can't move. That's sort of what happens to me when his hand clamps over my mouth. Like I'm paralyzed and my head is empty, and all there is in the world is that big hand and his cool breath, like the wind. So that's a key word right there, like. We know that his breath is like the wind. So let's keep an eye out for the word wind and what that might symbolize. So this is where the geezer stuck you, huh? He whispers, down in the basement, out of sight, out of mind. I still can't see his face. He's this huge shape in the room. Everything changes now, he says. It's time I got to know my own son. Who had his mind poisoned against me? He makes me sit up and shushes me to make sure. We're moving on to page 111. Top of page 111, I won't make any noise. Making noise is the last thing I want to do because I don't know whether or not Grim ever bought that gun he mentioned, or what might happen to him if he tries to use it. Graham's bad dream about Grim getting shot with his own gun seems pretty real right now, and I don't want to be the one to make it come true. I know what they told you, he says. It's all a big lie, you understand? I never killed anybody, and that's the truth, so help me God. By now, I'm sitting up on the bed and he's making me put on my clothes. And the weird thing is, none of this is a surprise. Somehow I always knew this would happen, that he would come for me in the night, that I would wake up and find him there, filling the room, and that I'd feel empty. So we're kind of getting a clue as to what Max is feeling right now. He feels empty. I'm so weak. I can hardly put on my shoes, like when you wake up and your arm is still asleep and you can't hardly make it move. That's what I feel like all over, numb and prickly and as light as a balloon. Like my hands might float up in the air if I let them. This'll be an adventure, he says. You're gonna have the time of your life, boy. Okay, we're leaving, and not a peep out of you. The bulkhead doors open and you can see the stars. So I want you to make a note and I want you to write stars. We're going to figure out what the stars symbolize to Max here. Stars. Some people think the stars look close enough to touch. We're on the top of page 112. But Freak says the sky is like a photograph from a billion years ago. It's just some old movie they're showing up there, and lots of those stars have already switched off by now. They're already dead. And what we're seeing is the rerun. Which makes sense if you think about it. Someday the rerun will come to an end, and you'll see all the stars start to flick off, like a billion little flames blown out by the wind. We're going to pause right there, and I want to take a look at our first, I want to take a look at this article here. Looking into space is looking back in time. When you go outside at night, I want you following along on the passage. We're starting at the beginning. When you go outside at night and gaze up into the sky, the stars seem eternal. Eternal means lasting or existing forever and unchanging. But that's our human experience shaping our perception. While we live on a much shorter time scale than the stars, stars are actually much like us. They are born, they live for an amount of time, and they inevitably means unavoidably, or it's certainly going to happen, and they inevitably die. The life and death of stars. Stars are just giant spheres of gas formed in clouds of gas and dust. Nuclear reactions at the center of stars provide enough energy to make them shine brightly for their lifetime. The exact lifetime of a star depends on its size. The larger a star, the shorter its life. Very large, massive stars burn their fuel much faster than smaller stars and may only last a few 100,000 years. Smaller stars, however, will last for several billion years because they burn their fuel much more slowly. Let's talk about the speed of light. Please be following along in that paragraph. When you turn on the light in your room, the light seems to instantly illuminate the entire room. However, even though there is nothing faster than light, light still travels at a finite or limited speed. That speed is known as the speed of light. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. So a really big number per second. To put it in another way, light travels 186,000 miles in a second. Astronomers use the speed of light to measure how far away stars and other galaxies are from Earth. A light year is the distance that light can travel in 1 year. It is equal to, you can see that really big number there. That is 5,900,000,000,000 miles. Let's finish up this article here. Looking into the past. Because the speed of light is constant and objects in the universe are so far apart, it can take a long time for light leaving a star to reach Earth. Some stars and galaxies are so far away that the light we are seeing left those stars billions of years ago. The Sun is the closest star to Earth, and it still takes light more than 8 minutes to reach us. You can think of it as seeing the Sun as it was 8 minutes ago. The bright star Sirius is 8.6 light years away. That means the light hitting your eye tonight has been traveling for 8.6 years. Put another way, when you look at Sirius tonight and you see it as it was 8.6 years ago. As you look at more distant objects, the effect intensifies it. When you gaze up into the night sky, you are actually looking into the past. So if you think about what Max just said in our book, it's like watching reruns. This is what happened a long time ago, and you're just seeing it now. But ultimately, it comes to an end. Let's talk about light from dead stars. Because of the vast distances light must travel to reach Earth, it's possible that a distant star could die before we ever saw its light. However, even though light may take thousands of years to reach us, stars typically live much longer than that. The sun will continue on as it is now for many billions of years. Even the largest stars, which use up their fuel far more quickly, can live for 1 million years or more. That means the odds of a star happening to die while its light is already on its way to Earth are very small. In terms of the star's lifetime, a few thousand years is the blink of an eye. A star would have to be near its own death after a very long time for this to happen. All right, we are going to go back into our book, and knowing what we know about stars now and how their light doesn't reach us for a long time and how it's kind of unlikely that we watch them all flicker out. I want you to take a look at someday the rerun will come to an end and you'll see all the stars start to flick off like a billion little flames blown out by the wind. There we see that wind again. What might that wind symbolize, and what do those stars mean in Max's life? Let's continue to think about that as we go on. This way, he says, quiet as a mouse. There's snow on the ground. Not a lot, enough to cover the ground. I can tell how cold the air is, but I can't feel it even without a jacket, which I didn't have time to put on. The cold doesn't matter. Nothing does. Really. Not Grim or Graham or the old stars in the sky or Freak and the Fair Guinevere and the Fair Gwen. They're all just make-believe. This dream I was having for a long time, and now I'm awake again, and he's still filling the room somehow, even though we're outside. I want you to think about who he is. Who is he talking about here? He's still filling the room. I want you to take 5 seconds to think about that. Who is he? Shout it out. Actually shout it out. It's his dad. His dad is still filling the room. Everything else feels empty. The lights are out at Freak's house, and I'm thinking, the stars clicked off. And I don't even know why I'm thinking that. It's like a dead voice in my head or something. So there's a whole lot to tear apart here, and let's start with wind. If we go back up to our first question, what might wind represent or symbolize to Max? We see a few excerpts from our story here. The first one is back on page 108. It says, I think I hear the wind right there in the room, except it's not wind. Someone's breathing. Who is breathing in his room? His dad. All right, moving on. Like I'm paralyzed and my head is empty, and all there is in the world is that big hand and the cool breath like the wind. And the final one. Someday the rerun will come to an end, and you'll see the stars start to flick off like a billion flames blown out by the wind. What is the wind? Who is the wind? What does the wind mean? And if you're having trouble, I want you to think about what wind does. What does wind do? If I have a piece of paper or something that's like balanced on my hand, what happens if wind comes in? What happens to it? Yes, it blows over. So what might wind be in Kevin's life? How is his life, or not Kevin, in Max's life? What's going on in Max's life that could be blown over? And who's blowing it over? I want you to tell me who you think or what you think wind is in this story, what it symbolizes. Give you just a little bit more time to think and jot down your thoughts. I'd like you to pause the video if you need more time. I'd like you to think about whether the author would agree with Freak that the sky is like a photograph from a billion years ago. Why or why not? I want you to put this into two parts. Do you think that they would agree that it's like a photograph? Do you think it's hyperbole that he's saying it's a billion years ago? Put down your thoughts. And our last question, pause the video if you need more time. Why might Max have hoped to see the lights on at Freak's house? Consider the lights. So the lights, or the stars, the lights and the stars are symbolize something. I'd like you to think about what the wind did. What's the light? How has Max's life been going? What does Freak mean to him? Who is Freak to Max? If you want to think about it as in like what's good and bad, is the light the good? If you think so, put it down. Is it all the good things? When you're done, move on to cycle 2.